Previously on Keep and Destroy.
G'day, mate. Good to be on here. And a nice little moment of Captain Magenta shining there as well. He doesn't get much love.
Straight away, they established that the war could go either way.
And I think Winged Assassin really did set that up quite well.
Dr. Magnus's shoulders are so high up, it looks like Captain Black's holding him by the scruff of his neck, like he's hanging him or something. It's just...
Something on this building that's not quite right.
Thanks to you, I can no longer unsee it.
We don't want to cause trouble and unrest in the fandom.
Hello there, and welcome to Keep and Destroy. This is your host, Adam Luff. This is the Gerry podcast, where I interview the fans and ask what 5 they would like to keep and what 5 they would like to destroy. So here we are with part 2 of Michael Sevior's interview. And now it's time to begin the destroy list. So what would you like to destroy, Michael?
So the first one I'd want to destroy would be the Secret Service, A Case for the Bishop.
Thank God. It's in the wrong category, but beggars can't be choosers. But I am so glad someone has picked the Secret Service. I've been dying for someone to pick this show. I love this show. I'm so glad, even though you've picked it for the destroy, it doesn't matter. I'm going to love talking about this show. So what is it that you don't like about it?
So I didn't mind the idea behind the story, and I loved the whole thing of, Father Unwin, and I actually didn't even have a problem with the Unwinese either, that some people have a problem with.
Yeah, I love it. It's great.
Quite amusing. But I think for me, the biggest problem, mix of the puppetry and the live action. For me, it just didn't work.
I thought that's what you were going to bring up. Yeah, that is one of the biggest issues that fans have, that it comes across as jarring. And I didn't mind it as much because to me it just felt like an extension of the human hands in the previous shows. And I think because it was long shots, it's not as bad. I do agree, having the real Stanley Unwin in the opening credits, that's jarring.
Yeah, that's one thing that straight away knocked me. I was like, oh, wait, hang on.
Especially because in the pre-title sequence, we don't see any puppets. Everything is live action at this point. The next scene after the credits, we then cut to some puppets, Saunders and Patterson. They come across as like very important key figures in the show, especially when they say this is an assignment for the bishop. So you think that they're like the higher ups. And they do come back for one more episode to catch a spy, and then they never appear again for the rest of the show. So they're in episodes 1 and 3, and then they're gone from the rest of the show, which to me always seemed a bit odd. Your problems with the Secret Service, for me, it was a big problem when they did The Investigator, where they actually have close-ups of live actors. They actually have live actors speaking on camera. The Investigator takes 2 characters, John and Julie, and shrinks them down. But because everyone else is live action, to me, it never came across like these characters were miniaturized. It just felt like John and Julie were turned into puppets. Whereas with the Secret Service, because everyone is a puppet in the show, so I think shrinking down Matthew wasn't so bad, because at least the actual characters are puppets, but the shots of the legs was just for the sake of establishing the size. But the Investigator took it a step further, and that doesn't work at all. The Investigator's not a good pilot, unfortunately, and I didn't think the premise was very good at all, so it didn't have the ability to run as a series. So I'm glad that show never got picked up. But then even Gerry himself was unhappy with the results, and I'd recommend watching it just for curiosity's sake, but it's not very good.
Give it a Captain Cook and see how it goes.
Yeah, it's available on DVD.
But I think, the problem with Secret Service is that, considering Gerry Anderson was wanting to use human actors, he should have just bitten the bullet there and just use live action. I kept losing that illusion with the puppetry. That's pretty much the main reason why someone destroyed this, is that just, for me, it was just really jarring, and I wouldn't say it made it unwatchable, but it just made it awkward watching.
The whole Unwinese, I mean, I like it. It's funny. The whole point is that you're not supposed to understand it, and that was the reason why the show got cancelled, was because Lou Grade saw the first episode and he didn't like the Unwinese, and he told Gerry that people in America are not going to understand what he's talking about.
All over the road, all terrible and disastrous Craven.
My God, are you still talking?
Again, Gerry said that that's the point, but Lou Grade just wasn't having it. But one thing I never quite understood was, he waited until the pilot was made and then he watched it on the screen to then find out that this Unwinese is not going to make sense. But surely when Gerry was pitching the show, I'm sure he would have mentioned that Stanley Unwin was going to use Unwinese on the villains to confuse them. unless Gerry hadn't cast Stanley Unwin at this point. I don't know.
It was funny watching the cop get a bit baffled by it all and then go, wait, life and death? Yeah, I can help you.
Yeah, and that's right. Yeah, and I loved also when he's trying to spell out some of these words. You spell E-I-G Hedgebold. E-I Hedgebold.
Yes, Hedgebold.
Just the one thing that I didn't like about many episodes of the Secret Service, and this episode is a good example of it, a lot of the times the villains are never seen getting their comeuppance. We see the ambassador drive past the vicarage, and we never see him ever again. So we don't know if the ambassador of Dreisenberg got arrested. I'm sure he did, but we never find out.
So next on my destroy list is Thunderbird's Cry Wolf.
I don't like that one either.
I hate to defend the kids, but I mean, it was kind of innocent. You know, they didn't mean to sort of like international rescue. I mean, they made a mistake. You went, okay, don't do it again. Getting a tour of the base was kind of weird considering the whole secrecy thing. But as you see in Security Hazard and Give or Take Million, they pick and choose when they really care about that, to be honest.
I hated the fact that Scott came up with this idea on the fly, and he didn't even consult Jeff about it.
Oh, for sure. And then you see them all looking big and proud, like, we're going to have these boys as guests. I need you on your best behavior. And it's like, is Scott calling the shots now?
If there had been two separate scenes, you can imagine Scott checked on Jeff off camera, fair enough. But no, it's all in real time. I love the line when he says to the kids, if it's okay with your dad, I'm going to take you to Tracy Island. It's like, well, Scott, check with your own dad first. Funny enough, in the movie Thunderbirds Are Go, when they're talking about security, and then Jeff says, rules were made to be broken. It's like, yeah, we gathered that. The voice actors, Sylvia Anderson and Christine Finn, both played the boys. And Sylvia Anderson voiced quite a lot of kid characters, like Jimmy in Supercar, Jonathan Zero in 5XL5, and she also played the voice of Barry Byrne, who was a one-off character in Stingray. I never quite liked Sylvia Anderson's voice for the kids because her voice was too husky and too deep. It was never convincing as a child, whereas Christine Finn, I felt she was much better at playing the voices of kids because she also was the voice of Chip in Security Hazard, and because her voice is so higher, that was a lot more convincing, I felt.
Yeah, Chip is definitely a bit more convincing. Just a lackluster episode, and yeah, the whole boy cried wolf thing, could go for that if they actually properly cried wolf, but
yeah,
they kind of didn't. No, they made a mistake, and then they sort of almost get punished for it. Oh, they've stopped calling. Oh, I knew they would shut up. Oh,
yeah.
I thought they would have learned after all we did for them.
If the kids actually did die and they find out in like newspapers, Jeff is all blustering. I don't know what the term's called, but you know, The Simpsons does it quite a lot where they put their finger on their collar and start pulling it out, like going, da-ho-ho, that thing. That's probably Jeff just going, da-ho-ho.
I'm really, really, really sorry.
I'm afraid sorry doesn't cut it with this Pope.
I'd say this is my least favourite Hood episode as well.
Definitely there. And I also find it interesting as well when the Hood does crash his Jeep over the edge.
Yeah.
Again, Scott he gets the edge, is like, oh, I don't think it could survive. Well, I better get the photographs. It's like, even if he's a bad guy, Scott, a guy could have just died. You're just like shrugging it off like it's nothing. But it's still like, geez, Scott, you can be a bit of a sociopath there, I guess. Captain Scott and the Mistrons, Heart of New York. It was really a nothing episode.
I get you. It's average for me. I thought Colonel White asking how the security guard was quite a nice touch, though, because there were little moments where Colonel White would be concerned for people, and even though that security guard is not like an elite member of Spectrum, I thought it was a nice touch.
Definitely.
And I think the ending, though, where even though they've lost, I loved it how Colonel White is like desperate to find a silver lining.
But surely these three men were not typical of mankind, whom I believe to be basically good. And because of this, I am convinced of our ultimate victory against the Mysterons.
Yeah, whatever you need to convince yourself, Colonel.
Just the threat of a bank, and doesn't matter. It's just like, it's just a strange that the Mysterons would pick a bank in the end. Even if they wanted to do a thing about human greed, there's no way they could predict that three robbers would get wind of it.
The concept of an episode where the Mysterons perhaps going to try to start a Great Depression, like a financial collapse, that could have had potential, but obviously the execution was horrible.
Yeah, you'd need to attack several banks, probably not just one, I guess.
Exactly, yes. Or even Fort Knox or something.
And even the burglars themselves at the start, they break into the Spectrum building to steal something based on the fact that yeah, they wanted this vault, so they had to have gold or something. It's like, how many organizations like Spectrum do you know have heaps and heaps of money in terms of goods like that? Like, for a bunch of burglars, they don't seem to be very good.
Funny enough, actually, that scene where Kruger is reading all the paperwork, there's one line that always gets me, and I'm really confused by it, and I'll explain why in a minute. It's when he says,
The report then describes an eyewitness account of a reconstruction as it actually happened.
I always look at that line, I'm thinking, is he referring to an actual episode? Because I don't think there is an episode.
Unless it's one not mentioned, like an adventure not mentioned, in which case, why didn't they bring that one up? Because that would have been probably a good episode, like actually having a witness.
No, you can't even go with Captain Scarlet in Winged Assassin because he can't remember. He just remembers feeling the heat of the flames on the back of his neck, and that's it. There is one other thing that, visually, and it's a weird moment. It's at the very beginning where the security guard checks that device that looks like a landmine before it sprays the knockout gas. We have the close-up shot of the device. A human hand is about to touch it, and it blows smoke. It's the same shot. We then pan across to the puppet. So a human hand and that same character, the puppet, are all in the same shot. So there's a bit of a size inconsistency. So that device must be huge. Or, like in the Secret Service, that knockout gas suddenly shrunk the guy into a puppet because it's all in one take as well.
I know there's other episodes of Captain Scott which aren't as good, but this was one really just meh, I guess. And sometimes forgettable is worse than bad, because at least bad episodes, you remember them, maybe even laugh at them for how bad they are.
I can see your point. I think for me, I'm actually the other way around. If an episode is really bad to the point where it's insulting my intelligence, then I'm going to really hate it. Even though boring can be fatal, of course, but I think I would rather have a boring episode that it is still faithful to the show, it just happened to be boring, rather than an episode that is memorable for all the wrong reasons. So
it's a balance, I think. Yeah, it's very subjective. Fourth item on my destroy list is Thunderbird 6.
Yeah, we have a movie this time rather than just an episode. Not many people are picking the one-off pilots or the feature films, so it's nice to talk about something different. So when I was a kid, I watched it a lot more than I did Thunderbirds Are Go, but as I've gotten older, I think Thunderbirds Are Go is better than Thunderbirds 6, but they were better as a big fish in a small pond. Having a movie-type storyline in a TV show works better than the movies where they're swimming amongst the sharks. They just didn't seem to stand out as well, in my opinion.
I agree with that. Lucky I watched it as a kid because it was one of the few VHS tapes that I had. It does have a bit of a nostalgic appeal to me, but apart from that, really compared to Thunderbirds I Go, it's just a really, really awful movie, I think. Just not much of a plot. I never got the whole obsession of Ellen in the movies. Like, why is he always the central character? And heck, why do they even need international rescue members on the maiden flight of Skyship One? And do you need to advertise it?
Yeah, I was going to say breaking security. I think the damage was done by this point. Jeff doesn't care anymore. By the time we get to Thunderbird 6, there are no rules anymore, so the guy's an idiot.
You could even have Penelope go on it, but why do you need Alan on it? Why does he deserve a holiday more than, I don't know, Scott or Virgil, who always seem to be working?
Give it to John. Give him something to... Well, obviously, Gerry never liked John, so there's no way he's going to get his own movie, but still.
Well, a fun twist.
It's crazy, but it could work.
Or even Gordon. Gordon did nothing in both movies. Although he does come up with the idea for the Tiger Moth being used as a rescue vehicle. Fair enough. He
appears briefly in Thunderbirds Go, but I even noticed as a kid, it's like everyone goes to the Swing Star, but Gordon.
Yeah.
It's like Paul Gordon. He doesn't get to go to the nightclub, but the villain wasn't really developed. Yes, he had Captain Foster, and he was kind of cool and charming, but he's working for this guy, the Black Phantom, who sort of looks like the Hood, but is he? Or is he a relative? Like, it's not really talked about. And when you've got a 90-minute movie...
The same problem with Thunderbirds Are Go. The Hood is the villain for the first half of the movie, and then once he is quote-unquote killed, because there's that theory of does he die in that movie? We'll get to that in a minute. But then, of course, for the second half of the movie, it's all about going to Mars, the rock snakes, and then returning to Earth and preventing a disaster. Yeah, you're right. With Thunderbird 6, at least Captain Foster is a consistent villain throughout the whole movie. I just look at Black Phantom as the big bad, no different from, say, how Blofeld was presented in From Russia with Love and Thunderball. Yeah, he's just in the background. So I don't think it was that bad, at least, because the main villain is Captain Foster, and he is in the movie for the most part. And in regards to the Black Phantom, I don't think it's the Hood. It's the same
Yeah, I
puppet,
don't think so.
but I don't know why people are so desperate to assume that must be the Hood. Is like just because it's the same puppet. Well, if you watch Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet, etc., there are so many times where they reuse the same puppet. So I just think of it like that.
All the time.
And the fact that the Black Phantom has black hair, it could be a wig, but I think it's just natural hair. And it's a different voice actor as well. Different costume, different location as well. He's in Casablanca. He's not in... I forget where exactly in Asia.
I think it's in Malaysia.
Malaysia, yes. So he's not in his temple in Malaysia. Also, the Black Phantom, he's got an army. The Hood never did in the show. He does have an army in that crap movie, and also in Thunderbirds Are Go, the CGI series. But in the original Thunderbirds, the Hood was always a freelancer, and I always preferred that, really. And it's a different voice actor as well, because Ray Barrett is the voice of the Hood previously, but then Black Phantom is apparently Gary Files, who was the voice of Captain Magenta. I'm not going to argue with that because I can't pinpoint who is the actual voice. It's very difficult to narrow down, but if that is Gary Files, then it's really good because he never used that voice anywhere else. He never used it in Captain Scarlet or Joe 90 or the Secret Service, so it's a good voice. There's so many elements that go against with the theory that it's the Hood, so I don't think it is the Hood.
Agreed.
And
I never thought, even as a kid, I never saw it as the Hood. I thought he looked similar, but I never thought he's the Hood. He's the Black Phantom.
Exactly, yeah. It's just the same puppet, really. But then in Thunderbirds Are Go, where his plane crashes, a lot of people, and to a point, even myself, think that he dies because we never see him again. But people have brought up a good argument where other episodes, like Trapped in the Sky and Martian Invasion, the Hood could possibly die in those episodes, yet he never did. So why is it that he dies in Thunderbirds Are Go? So maybe he didn't die in that one, but...
The only argument I can think of is that crashing into the ocean, middle of the ocean, makes it a fair bit harder to survive than
True.
some of the other places he crashes in. I think in some cases you can just run out. The whole premise of Thunderbird 6, where Jeff wants a Thunderbird 6 for no reason at all and gives Brains no brief, but I just want a Thunderbird 6.
I like how Brains is presented it in this movie, how he's losing patience with Jeff. It's a nice little change of character, and he comes up with some pretty good ideas.
And Jeff's like, oh, that's too narrow. Even if you don't make it Thunderbird 6, you can at least make it a pod vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, Thunderbird 4 is a glorified pod vehicle, really. That is exactly what Thunderbird 6 becomes. It's a glorified pod vehicle.
How many times you can ever use that? It's the worst sort of vehicle reveal.
Other than the fact that it does highlight Brains in a different light, rather than just being the boffin character who's always getting it right and everything and is perfect. I like how he's a little bit more three-dimensional this time by getting frustrated at Jeff. But Parker is a bad example. I hated the way he was presented.
Even to the point where they're on the Tugmorph.
Alan, I've only just realized Parker isn't with us. We must have left him aboard the airship.
You really care about your brother there, Penny?
The guy who saved her life a few times before, one of your closest companions, who's been with you through thick and thin. Like, yeah, I don't care about Parker, really. And of course, laughing at him behind his back as well at the beginning. It's very mean-spirited.
Yeah, even as a kid watching that, I just thought, why are they being so mean to Parker?
Why is he wearing a fake mustache at the beginning?
Yes, I mentioned this. What is with the mustache? Did he just want to look a bit fancier?
Maybe it's because he wasn't in the final scene of Thunderbirds Are Go where everyone else was wearing fake beards and fake mustaches, so here's my opportunity to wear mine.
There's barely any rescue. Even the rescue they do is just, even compared to what they did in Thunderbirds Are Go, where it was really big and dramatic, was just sort of waiting to drop this big thing on the missile base.
Yeah, it's very slow and dull. Just sort of, you're just sitting around waiting. I do love, there is one moment though when all the others are on the Tiger Moth and they're flying away and they've got their problems. We keep cutting back to Thunderbird 1 and 2, and there is one moment where the music really emphasizes how tedious it is. bored.
Also, the Whistle Stop Cafe, where they've got model trains bring out the food. I'd go to that place.
It reminds me of sushi restaurants, because I used to live in San Francisco, and there was one sushi restaurant near where I used to live, and that was sushi plates on boats swimming around in circles. I did like the Whistle Stop Inn. It's very creative, that. Thunderbird 6 does have some great set designs.
Oh, for sure, it does. Some of the best ones.
I mean, I love the sequence where they're flying over the Sphinx in Egypt.
Yeah, Grand Canyon.
I suppose style over substance is the best way to describe it, really.
It's more the story and the characterization that really kills it.
Yeah. When Brains is laughed at for coming up with the idea of the airship, I love Jeff's line when he says, yeah, they laughed, and then they built it. I'm sure you've watched The Simpsons, where Marge becomes a cop, and then Chief Wiggum and all the other police are laughing at her, and then eventually they stop laughing.
Welcome aboard.
I just like the idea that Brains is laughed at by the committee members for an airship, and they're laughing, and then they stop. Oh, okay, let's go build it. And then they go and build the ship.
And the final one on my destroy list is Thunderbirds, the Mighty Atom. Do I really have to?
I insist.
The starting premise seems pretty cool enough, the plant and everything else blowing up. Then the second half, it really bombs. Just
right.
Really pathetically for me. Just, so they've rebuilt the plant. They haven't addressed any of the issues that came from the first one, like the seawater intake needing to be cut off. And then the Hood somehow can get around the whole facility planting bombs, and there's no extra security after last time either.
Yeah, they actually even say, the two scientists say that they're the only members in the area, which is completely stupid. You're right.
And you're seeing people saw the Hood and had a shootout with him. You go, well, okay, there's a security risk here. And then you have the whole thing with Penelope being so eager to go on a mission. I never really found that a great little plot point, because it's a case of she wants to go on a mission, but what's she really going to do, considering the stuff that Scott and Virgil do is so specialised and they train for it?
Yeah.
She's just going to be like that kid who's standing there holding the spanner for his dad while he does all the work on the car.
Good description, yes.
Just didn't really fit for me. Never has.
And even Virgil says earlier on, from the reports we've been getting, you've been having more adventures than we have. It's not like she's unfamiliar with these sort of things. Why is it that going on an international rescue mission is like a rite of passage or something? She's clearly been doing quite a lot already. Now, this is one of those examples where the transmission order works out for the better, because in the transmission order, the Mighty Atom is episode 14. Fair enough, Virgil's line makes sense. We've had a lot of episodes with her, so that works. But in the production order, where Trapped in the Sky, episode 1, and then we don't see her again until episode 6, the Mighty Atoms. A lot of these are obviously untelevised adventures, but still, the idea that she's a secret agent, she's already doing quite a lot, so why does she feel insignificant? You don't have to feel that way. You're doing quite a lot of good stuff already.
Yeah, the Corona and Parker argument is a bit of a laugh. It's one of the more lighthearted moments of the whole show, I think, especially for both of the characters. Yeah, Mighty Atom is just one of those episodes I tend to try and avoid at all costs.
I've yet to find anyone that's going to defend this episode, and I'm not going to be one of them. I'm indifferent to it, really, so I don't blame you. And that comes to the end of both the keep and the destroy lists. So I do want to ask one other thing before we leave. So of all the vehicles that you've seen in the Gerry Anderson shows, pick one to keep and one to destroy.
Well, that's a tricky one. Keep, definitely my favorite one. Zero X, one of the more iconic vehicles of the whole series, I'd say.
Yes, I think so too. I'd pick an SPV myself, but...
And the one I would say I'll destroy would be a Spectrum patrol car, just because of all the sort of special vehicles that are presented throughout the Gerry Anderson canon, it's really just sort of plain and not interesting, doesn't really do anything special, it's just really a car.
The Rhino in New Captain Scarlet, that was the updated version of the SPV. I'm keeping the SPV and destroying the Rhino, and yet they're both linked together. The Rhino is just a very ugly looking car.
Yeah, just looking it up, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you once again, Michael. It's been great talking to you. You've got a great list, and it's been fun going into details with your choices.
Cheers, Adam. It's been great talking to you as well.
Thank you very much for watching this video. Please give it a like, a share, and a subscribe. If you would like to donate to the show to help it continue, please go to Buy Me a Coffee or GoFundMe. The links are in the description. This is Adam Luff, signing out.